We're going to work on making this second light. I'm going to show you how to make this part of it semi-transparent in the viewport so you can kind of see through it just like this. We're also going to make the light that goes on the inside, so we're going to make a somewhat detailed light because I did find a pretty good reference for this light, so we're actually just going to make it since I have a reference for it. And I'll show you how to make these little pieces that go on the inside. This is as close as I can get it as far as I can tell according to my references. I think it's shaped something like this, but it is hard to see through the glass. So we'll try to make this as best we can. So to start out, we're going to make a circle with 20 vertices because we're going to have 20 of these little pieces. So we want it to match up with that. So we're going to go back to our Blender file and we're going to create a new circle. So go to create and choose circle, change the vertex count to 20 and press enter. Then we're going to tab into edit mode. We're going to do R, X, and then 90 and press enter. And we're just going to bring this back some and then scale it down. We actually want this circle to be maybe a little bit bigger than this part of the headlight. So if you go to wireframe, just kind of make it a little bit bigger. You can go to front view by pressing 1 and then just scale this with S until it's a little bit bigger than this area here, and that should be fine. Another thing I actually wanted to do before we continue with this is go back to object mode and select this piece and then go to edit mode. Then select one of these edges. We actually need to select one of the edges on this part too, and then do Control L, so you should have this outer part and then this part. Because looking at some of the references, this is actually curved out quite a bit more than what I have it. So we're just going to do S and then Y to scale this on the Y axis. And we're just going to make sure that this has a lot more curve than it did previously, because the other references I saw have this curved quite a bit. So I'm going to go to side view by pressing 3 and then Z for wireframe. And again, we just want to make sure the light's not sticking out past this point here. So you want the light to be a little bit further back. So that's really it for that part. That's better, closer to the shape it's supposed to be. So we're going to go back to this piece, so go to object mode, select this piece, and then tab into edit mode. And we're going to bring this up some. So just bring it up on the Z-axis. And I'm going to bring it up a bit higher than this light here. And I'm also going to bring it back some more. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this out. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring it out a little bit more. Then we're going to scale it down some. I'm going to make this a little bit longer, so I'm going to alt right click and then just make this a little bit longer. Then to add some thickness to this, we're going to tab into object mode, we're going to add a modifier, and we're going to add the solidify modifier. You can leave it at the default settings, that should be fine. We're also going to add a bevel modifier, and this will help when we turn on smooth shading. So if we go to tools and turn on smooth shading, it doesn't look the best now. We have to change this to the angle method and it'll look a bit better. I'm going to change the scale of this, so I'm actually going to go back to edit mode, and I'm also going to shorten this up a little bit just because I think it looks better shorter. So we're going to alt right click here, and I'm just going to scale mine out a bit more so that it's less of an extreme angle at this part. Once you're happy with the shape of it, just go to object mode and apply this first modifier, which was the solidify. You're going to leave this one here for now, and we're going to tab back into edit mode. We're going to alt right click on this bottom edge or bottom edge loop, and we're going to do shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, P to separate, and choose selection. Then tab into object mode, select this object. And actually we want to change the segments to 2. So I'm going to change the segments to 2. I'm going to go back to this object and do the same. Set that to 2 segments. And then I'm going to select this object again. Tab into edit mode. A to select everything. E to extrude. Right click to cancel and bring this out. This headlight part is actually a bit longer than this part. So just make it a bit longer than this part. And then you're going to just scale it down slightly. Just a little bit is going to be enough. That should be fine. Then we're going to E to extrude, right click to cancel, and you're going to bring this out a little bit more. And then scale it in some more. And maybe bring it out again slightly. and that should be okay. I'm going to E to extrude, right click to cancel, and scale this down one more time. And this is going to be the center piece. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring it out slightly. Then E to extrude, right click to cancel, and scale it in. Then E to extrude, right click to cancel, Alt M, and choose at center to merge it at the center. So if we go to object mode and we turn on smooth shading, we can take a look at what we have. We may want to change the angle to something higher, so if we do like 70, you'll get smoother shading in this area, and that may be what you want. I kind of like it like this. Or you can do the lower value and just have shading like this in this part, but I'm not crazy about how that looks, so I think I'm going to go with this instead. I'm going to make some changes to my objects. I'm not really happy with the scale of some of this, so I'm going to just hold shift and select this object, so you should have both selected, and then do Control J. That'll join them together for now. Then we're going to tab into edit mode. We're going to switch to vertex select. We're going to do A to select everything, Z for wireframe, B to box select, middle mouse deselect, and deselect the front. Then I'm going to do S, Shift, and Y to exclude the X-axis, and I'm just going to scale this out some just to make it a bit bigger, and then I'm going to scale this out too, so I'm going to select a vertex here, Z for wireframe, B to box select, and then S, Shift, and Y again, and just scale this out some. I want it to have more of like an angle to this so that it's a little bit angled upward. And maybe I'm just going to bring this back slightly too. And then what I'm going to do is do Z for wireframe, and I'm going to select these right here, and I'm going to do S, Shift, and Y and scale them down slightly until I'm happy with how that looks. So I like the look of that a bit better. It's more like angled up a bit, and it just looks nicer to me. So I'm going to now separate these again. So I'm going to select a vertex on the front, do Control L, then do P to separate and choose selection, tab into object mode, select this object, change the angle to 70 and press enter. When we merge them, it set the angle to this angle, so we just had to change it back. Now we're going to make some of the interior pieces, so we're going to tab into edit mode and we're going to select these two vertices at the very top. So if you go to front view, it should be these two vertices right here. We're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, P to separate and choose selection, then tab into object mode, select this piece, tab into edit mode, A to select everything, then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring it out slightly. And we're also going to add a modifier, and we're going to choose the mirror modifier, and then we're going to bring it to the top by clicking on this up arrow, so the mirror modifier should be at the top. We're going to turn on clipping, and we're going to turn on this option. We want this to be fairly skinny, so that's probably going to be okay right there. Then we're going to do A twice, and we're going to bring this down slightly. Just bring it until it's hiding inside the mesh here. That should be okay. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this down. We're going to tab into object mode, do Shift H to hide everything else, then tab into edit mode. You can do Z for wireframe if you want. We're going to do Control R, left click and drag this up. Then we're going to do Control R, left click and drag this up again. You want to make sure this is exactly in the center. You can actually do delete, dissolve edges, then do Control R, left click, right click to make sure this one's halfway between these two. Then we're going to select the three vertices on the top for here and the three vertices on the top for here. So you should have these three and these three. And you're just going to bring this down some. And that's going to create our nice little piece. If you want to make this a little bit wider or a little bit thicker, you can just do Control 3 for side view and B to box select. Get all these bottom vertices and just bring them down slightly if you want this to be a little bigger. And that should probably be fine. You can even bring this down a little more if you feel you should. Bring these down right here. And that should be fine. So that's our nice little piece there. The only other thing you might want to do is do A and select everything and do Control N to recalculate the normals. And then in object mode, you're going to turn on smooth shading. You can also, at this point, apply the mirror modifier. So just apply the mirror modifier. Tab into edit mode, alt right click on the center edge, delete and dissolve edges. Then tab back into object mode. We're going to adjust this value, so I'm going to drag it all the way to the left. Then I'm going to hold shift and slowly drag it to the right until I get a bevel that I like. So that looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with that. Now we're going to do alt H to unhide everything. And we're going to select this object, then we're going to tab into edit mode. We're going to select this very center vertex, and we're going to do Shift S, cursor to selected, so your cursor should be here. Then we're going to tab into object mode. We're going to do Z for wireframe. We're going to select this object, and we're going to tab into edit mode, A to select everything, do 1 for front view. We want to rotate this so it's halfway between here, so we're going to have to rotate in this case by 9 degrees. But first we need to change this to the 3D cursor, so we need the pivot point to be on 3D cursor. Then we can do R and then 9 and press enter. Just make sure in object mode that your object is not sticking through. If it is, you're going to want to go back and do Control Z in edit mode, and then just bring this down some, and then try it again. Once you bring it down some, you're going to do R and then 9 degrees and press enter. And then check again to make sure it's not sticking through. If everything looks good, you can do Shift D and then R18 and press enter. And then you can do Shift R to repeat that process until you have all the little pieces going all the way around. We're going to tab into edit mode or object mode. We're going to press Z for wireframe. We're going to select this object, we're going to tab into edit mode, alt right click on this edge loop, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, 1 to go to front view, Z for wireframe. We're going to change this first to the median point, so change this to median point. Then we're going to press S to scale this down, and we want it to be a little bit basically at the bottom of these pieces here, so just scale it down until it's like at the bottom of these pieces right here. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale it down again. Just a little bit like that should be fine. Then we're going to do Control plus to get the other edge loop. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and we're going to bring this forward some. Then we're going to alt right click on this bottom edge here. Just make sure you get the one that's forward the most. And then do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, P to separate the selection, and choose selection. Tab into object mode, and then select this object, tab into edit mode, alt right click on this edge loop, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, P to separate and choose selection, tab into object mode, select this object, and press H to hide, select this object and press H to hide. Then select both of these circles and do Control J to join them together. Tab into edit mode, A to select everything, Shift Q to do bridge edge loops. If you don't have the hotkey set up, go to Mesh, Edges, and Bridge Edge Loops. To set up the hotkey, just right click and add shortcut. Mine says change shortcut because I already have one. Just left click on that and then hover over this and do Shift Q to change it to Shift Q. Now we're going to tab into object mode, turn on smooth shading. We're going to add modifier and choose solidify. We're going to move this to the top, so just click this up arrow, move this to the top. You can adjust the solidify amount just by holding shift and left clicking and dragging. Just to make this a bit skinnier, that should be fine. Now we can do Alt H to unhide everything. I'm going to quickly show you how to make this glass show up as transparent in the viewport. So we're going to right click on this glass part to select it. We're going to have to change this from Blender Render to Cycles Render. So left click here, change it to Cycles Render. We're going to have to add a new material, so we're going to go to the Materials tab and click on New. We're also going to have to go to the Object options and then go down to the bottom and put a check mark on Transparency. Then we can go back to the Materials tab, go down to the bottom, left click on Settings, and then left click on the alpha value and drag to the left. And you can see it start to become transparent, so you want it to be semi-transparent but not too transparent, so something like that's probably going to be okay. That looks reasonable for a light, I would say, but you can adjust it to whatever you feel is appropriate. Don't worry about this tab. This is just a special add-on that I have. We're not using it at this moment, so don't worry about that. Now we're going to make the light bulb that goes inside this. So we're going to go to Create. We're going to choose UV Sphere. We're going to change the segments to 10 and press Enter. Change the rings to 10 and press Enter. Tab into Edit Mode, RX90 and press Enter. S to scale this down. You want this to be fairly small. That's probably going to be alright for starters. We're going to keep the center point and then 3 rings around it. So we're going to Alt right click on the 4th ring. We're going to do Delete and choose Vertices. We're going to select the vertex on this other part, do Control L, Delete, and choose Vertices. To make this a little easier, we're going to tab into Object Mode. We're going to do Shift H so that we only have this to work with. You can also go to Tools and turn on Smooth Shading. Then we're going to tab into Edit Mode, Alt right click, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this out. That should be alright. So we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it out again, and then S to scale it down. We're going to create another circle, so we're going to go to Create, we're going to choose Circle, and change the vertex count to 6. We're going to do RX and then 90 and press Enter. We're going to S to scale this down. If you want to, you can go to front view and then scale it down this way. We want this to be a little bit smaller than this outer circle, so you want all the vertices to be inside of this one. And then we're going to bring this back and we're going to snap it on the y-axis to this point here. So grab it on the y, hold Control, snap it there. Then we're going to E to extrude, right click to cancel, and S to scale this down. Then we're going to Alt right click on the outer part, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring it back like this. Then you're going to do Control L and Control N to recalculate the normals. I'm going to change the scaling on this part a bit, so I'm going to do H to hide this. I'm going to do Alt right click, and then I'm just going to scale this out a little bit, and that's going to look nice. So I'm going to do Alt H to unhide this. Then we're going to create a new circle, so create circle, change the vertex count to 18 and press Enter. RX and then 90, press Enter. We're going to drag this back and hold Control to snap it to this point. Then we're going to bring it a bit further back. I'm going to do 1 to go to front view, S to scale this down. You want this to be about that big, probably is going to be alright. So you just want to make sure this is a bit farther back than this bottom part here. Then we're going to Alt and Shift right click, and we're going to do Alt F to fill this in. We can tab into Object Mode, go to Tools, and turn on Smooth Shading. It's not going to look the best yet, but we will make it look better. We're going to Alt right click on this. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring this back slightly. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, and then scale this down some. Once you have the correct scale, we're going to do Control plus and then Control plus again. We're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, and bring this back slightly. Then we're going to do S, Y, and -1 to flip it on the y-axis and press Enter. Then do Control N to recalculate the normals. Then we're going to Alt right click on this, Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, grab it on the y-axis, hold Control, and snap it to this furthest point. Alt and Shift right click to get this outer loop as well as the inner loop. Shift and Q to bridge edge loops. Then we're going to Alt right click on this, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and bring it back. We actually don't want to bring it back that far, so I'm going to bring it back probably like this should be fine. Then we're going to fill in these faces here, so we're going to select these 2 vertices here on the end, and then just press F a bunch of times. You can even hold it down if you want to, just to make it all quads. Then we're going to switch to Face Select, and we're going to select the face on the left side and the right side. Then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel. We're going to do S and then X to scale on the X axis and bring this out. You want to scale it out until it's basically at the edge of this line here, so do S and then X until it basically lines up perfectly with that line there as best as you can get it. Then we're going to go to Add Modifier. Or we're going to go to the Modifiers tab, we're going to add a modifier, we're going to choose the Bevel modifier. We're going to change it to Angle, we're going to change the angle amount to 45 and press Enter. Change the segments to 2. Left click and drag this value all the way to the left. Then hold shift and left click and drag to the right until you get a nice smooth bevel. Just a small bevel is going to be enough. Something like that should be fine. And everything should be looking nice. The only thing I want to change on my model is I want this spacing to be less. So I'm going to select a face in this area, do Control L, and then drag this in on the Y-axis to make this less of a space here. I can even bring it in a bit further if I want to. So that should be fine. Maybe a little bit more than that, just so there's less space in that area. That looks good to me. Now all that's left is to position this correctly. So we're going to do Alt-H to unhide everything. We're going to right click on this to select it. Just make sure you have the light bulb selected and tab into edit mode. Then press A twice to select everything. At this point you can still scale things down a little if you feel it needs to be a little smaller. So you can use S to scale it down or up according to how big you feel it should be. You can go to side view if you want by pressing 3 and Z for wireframe. And you can position this pretty much wherever you want. If you think it should be up here, you can position it up here, or you can bring it back further to like right here if you want. On mine I positioned it closer to up here, so I'm going to do that again on this one and that should be fine. So once you're done and once you're happy with it, you can take a look around. You can see your light on the inside. We have all these details. Once you're finished with it, you can hide this empty if you want. I'm going to right click on this and H to hide it. But that should be it for this, so we're just going to save it by going to File and Save. Thank you to our awesome Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter yourself, head on over to patreon.com/StephenBrooks. Thank you for your support.